All right, y'all. I wanted to do something different. It's this movie called Meshes of the Afternoon. It came out in 1943. It's only like a 13-minute movie, but basically it's like an experimental type of film. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, it's a silent movie, like people are saying things, but you can't hear them, and then all of a sudden subtitles come up. This ain't that. It's just a straight silent movie, no words. You got to look at everything that happens within it. So we see this area where a flower is dropped, right? This lady's walking by. She picks up the flower, and then she goes over to her door. She ends up dropping the key down the steps, but she picks the key back up and then she puts it in the door. Now, when she gets in the house, she looks around, sees everything fine. Then we look at the kitchen table. On the table is a loaf of bread, a knife that's getting carved into the bread, and a cup of tea. Then at the bottom of the steps, we see a phone, which is off the hook. She ends up putting the phone back on the hook and then goes upstairs. Now, when she goes upstairs to this room, we don't hear it. We see a record playing or whatever like that. She cuts the record player off, goes back downstairs, sits on a little couch chair, and takes a nap with the flower in her lap. Now we go back outside again. We see this like Grim Reaper type of figure or whatever like that. But whoever it is has a mirror as a face. We just go call him Mirror Face right now. So Mirror Face is walking in the opposite direction of this flower, and we see this lady chasing after her. But she can never catch up to Mirror Face, then she just stops like she's about to go into the house or whatever, the same house. So she goes into the house, but this time the knife is actually at the bottom of the steps. So the thing is, she walks past the knife and goes upstairs. And it feels like once she reached the top of the steps, it feels like she went through a window to get to the room. It's weird. But when she looks at the bed, she sees a key there, and under it is a knife under the bed. I'm like, how'd the knife get up there? So then she's having all this like disorientation, and she's like going backwards through the window, but the window's leading back to the steps, and you see the room spinning around in a circle. But when she goes back downstairs, we find the record player is now downstairs next to the lady that's sitting on the couch. So the person that walked into this room, her name is Maya, and we just realized that when you see both of their faces, it's the same person. So now I'm thinking to myself, it's a psychological situation that's happening here. So yeah, one form of Maya that's on the couch, one form of Maya walking to the window, and she's looking at the scene outside the window where Mirrorface is holding this flower. And another version of Maya is chasing after her and then going back, stopping, and then going to the door. While she's doing that, the Mirrorface of Maya looking out the window takes this key out of her mouth. And I think the key is a big part of this whole movie. So this new form of Maya enters the door, but this time Mirrorface is actually in the house already. And she's got the flower and she's like walking upstairs. So now Mirrorface is already in the room. Meanwhile, Maya's trying to get the steps. And this part is like so disorienting because the steps are going back and forth. She's stumbling back and forth and the camera tricks are crazy with it. It was wild. So anyway, she finally gets to the top of the steps and we see Mirrorface planting a flower on the bed. So afterwards, Mirrorface looks over at Maya for like 2 seconds and all of a sudden she just disappears. So the next thing we see is Maya transitioning into different parts of the steps. So she ends up going back down the steps again, looking out the window, and we see another Mirrorface and Maya segment or whatever, and Maya's coming through the door again. But this time, the Maya in the mirror pulls out another key or whatever, but the key ends up turning into a knife. So another version that is Maya that's coming into the door actually has a knife in her hand this time. And then we get this shot where there's 2 other Mayas that are sitting at the table, and the other Maya comes down to sit down at the table. Now I gotta say this. The fact that you could have 2 split versions of the same person and that shot is, I mean, it's done now, like, right? But back then in the 1940s, she was fucking crazy. Like, how would you even pull that off? Now, this time, when they're at the table, there's nothing on the table. No bread, no tea. So this 3rd or 4th alternate version of Maya puts the knife down on the table and it turns into a key. One of the Mayas takes the key, another key appears. The other Maya takes the key, another key appears. The 3rd Maya takes the key, and all of a sudden the key in her hand turns into a knife. Now, once that happens, the other 2 Mayas are covering their hands over their face, Lord. The Maya that has a knife in her hand all of a sudden has these like metaphorical goggles on. And then she starts walking towards the couch. But the way they show her feet is like she's walking on the beach and then walking through the house. It's nuts. So this particular Maya is putting the knife up like she's about to kill Maya, the one that's sleeping. But when Maya wakes up, all of a sudden there's this dude named Alex in front of her. Now, in real life, they're actually a married couple. But for the sake of this movie, they're, I guess, together or whatever. So while he's standing over her, he ends up dropping this key in her lap. She ends up giving him a flower. And the way he lifts her up out the chair when he pulls up her arms is like she just floated up out the chair. Now, while Alex is about to go up the steps, we realize the phone is now back at the bottom of the steps again. Off the hook as he put it back on the hook. We look at the table and realize the bread, the tea, and the knife are all sitting at the table again. Now, as he's going upstairs, Maya follows him upstairs. Now, the thing is, he walks over to the bed and puts the flower on the bed, just like the Mirrorface person would have did. But while he's doing this, we see this mirror at the top of the bed. It's like a small mirror. He ends up grabbing the mirror. I'm like, okay. Now afterwards, Maya ends up laying on the bed and Alex is just caressing her, you know what I'm saying, making sure she's okay. But then the crazy thing happens. As Maya's laying there, the flower turns into a knife. She ends up throwing the knife and all we see is like broken glass and stuff. And then you see all this glass that's like falling towards the beach as the waves are picking it up. So then we see this scene where Alex is walking over towards the door. Before he gets to the door, he picks up this flower. He ends up putting the key in the door, but what he sees when we see in the door is a room that has broken glass around it. And Maya's sitting in the chair, but the thing is, she got a bunch of seaweed on her and she's laying there, eyes open, done deal, dead as shit. And that's basically the end of the film. So let me see if I can try to explain this. I feel like the whole purpose of the key is opening up her subconscious into her mind. Now, could Alex have represented Mirror Face and been like the Grim Reaper or something? Because there's got to be some semblance with the mirror thing, right? But then I thought to myself, it probably wasn't him because he looked pretty shocked by the time he walked into the door near the end of the movie. Then I thought to myself, could Maya have killed herself? You got to think to yourself, the whole time the knife was moving in different positions in different spots throughout the house. But then there was one image of herself where she had the knife before she walked in the house. So then I thought to myself, why did she have seaweed on her at the end? Did she try to drown herself at the beach and it didn't work and then she decided to cut herself? But the image we see at the end, there's no cuts on her. She's just laid out in the chair dead. I mean, honestly, it's all up for interpretation. You can come up with your own thoughts on it. I mean, just watch it. It's only like 13, 14 minutes. You know what I'm saying? You know, at one point in time, this is rated one of the 40 best American movies of all time, which some people are saying it might still be to this day. I mean, with the imagery of the steps and the camera and thinking to yourself like they were doing this back then. But once again, it's all up for interpretation. You can watch it and figure it out for yourself. I mean, it's on YouTube, Meshes of the Afternoon. Check it out.